Welcome back to the Chats and Recaps podcast with your host, Sammy.
And Mimi. We're glad you joined us today. So let's get into it.
Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
And don't forget to hit that notification bell so that you never miss an upload.
These are true stories from the Netflix original docu-series, Jeffrey Epstein, Filthy Rich. The following podcast contains graphic depictions of sexual assault, rape, and discusses suicide. This content may not be suitable for all listeners. Listening discretion is advised.
If you or anyone you know is a victim of sexual assault, you can contact the RAINN National Hotline, that's RAINN, RAINN National Hotline, at 1-800-656-4673, which is available for free 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, or any other local organization which offers assistance at no cost to you.
Welcome back to another episode of our podcast. Today, we're going to be wrapping up the series on Jeffrey Epstein, Filthy Rich. We're going to be covering episodes 3 and 4. I feel like these two episodes, the first two episodes were pretty intense and hard to watch. I feel like 3 and 4 were even more aggravating.
It was worse.
Yeah, I feel like it was.
It was so bad. I wanted to go through my screen and just slap him in his face.
I know.
And a lot of other people that were defending him.
Yeah, definitely.
I just wanted to go in there and slap him.
So the episode started off with a deposition. And to me, I feel like it was more clear that they were not necessarily trying to get answers from the questions because they knew he wasn't going to talk. But it was more so they are trying to like pick at his ego to aggravate him, to get him to say something that would, what's the word?
That would set him off. So that
so that he could say something that would,
so they can see his
give them something to use. Something like that.
Yeah.
So I didn't notate down like exactly the questions that they asked him.
Well, the first opening question was when the episode starts. It starts with, "So is it true you have an egg-shaped penis?" That's how it started. And then he was like, "What? What? What was the question again?" And then he said, "Well, one of the victims described your penis, and these aren't my words, these are their words. And they said that it was shaped oval, kind of egg-like shape." And that's how it started. And then of course, he started saying, "Well, my lawyer, I would love to answer those questions, but my lawyer, not in his words exactly, but my lawyer tells me that I plead the 5th and the 6th. So, and throughout the whole thing. And then they ended it because, he's pleading the 5th and the 6th. So what's the point?
Exactly. What is the point? So they really start to go more into how Epstein's lawyers worked out a deal with the U.S. Attorney's Office where he pled guilty. He somehow managed to get only 18 months in Palm Beach Detention Facility and somehow avoided the possible sentence of 15 years in prison. He never actually made it to the court procedures. And I'm sorry, I'm like, even with that being said, only 15 years in prison for all the stuff that he did, I still don't feel like was enough. I think that he should have had a much longer sentence.
Well,
but that's besides the point.
When he went to the court, the defense attorneys for the victims, the surviving victims, were kind of perplexed because when they got there, they noticed that only he and his lawyer, along with the judge, went to the chambers, which that's unusual because any agreements need to be presented with the defense lawyers, the prosecution lawyers, everyone who is defending or is on the case is supposed to be in the chambers. So they found it really weird that they weren't told to go back to the chambers where Epstein and his lawyers were with the judge. And that's when they did this deal. So they
Correct.
did the deal for, he
It was
pled guilty
It was a
for
plea deal.
Soliciting prostitution of a minor, and served only 18 months, which really he didn't serve 18 months. He stood pretty much in like if he was in a bad motel.
Yeah, when we get to that, because
yeah,
after he did the little plea deal or whatever that got him 18 months in prison,
the immunity.
The prosecution, one of the lawyers stated he was given immunity from any other state to charge him, and immunity from all and immunity from all federal charges, both for himself and for any of his named and unnamed co-conspirators. And the lawyer was saying, he's like, I've never heard of a plea agreement that gives immunity to the target of the case, and pretty much, like they said, gave a get out of jail free card to any of their co-conspirators, whether they were named or unnamed.
And this was done by the prosecution, which
correct. They bring up Alexander Acosta a lot, how he had a part that he played in the plea deal. And he was kind of like breaking down basically the list of all the levels that they would have had to go through for that plea deal to be approved. And basically the defense was saying they were just doing their job. And basically their job was to make them think they didn't have enough evidence to actually have a case against him to convince them to go with the plea deal.
Yeah. And the thing was that in the immunity, it stated that none of the victims can go after him for any kind of punitive damages. They cannot take him to court. They cannot speak about the accusations to anyone. That was part of that agreement, the immunity. And I'm thinking, who are these lawyers and who are these prosecutors and lawyers, and like, I don't understand that.
Yeah, me neither.
That's disgusting.
Outside, they were calling it like a backdoor deal. And then they show a little part where somebody reached out to him, like someone from the media, I believe it was, trying to get a story out of Epstein about like how he got this plea deal and all that stuff. And then he starts going off on like this whole tangent that sounds like it was rehearsed, or that he obviously, I guess he did a lot of researching to try to protect himself. And he was like talking about how a 16-year-old being used for prostitution, that it was only a $100 charge, and that he actually got a worse sentence. I was like, what?
He told his lawyers, oh, I could have defended myself better.
Not only that, yeah, he
like,
believed
are you kidding
that
me?
his 18-month sentence that he got, which, by the way,
wasn't even a sentence.
Wasn't even really a sentence. He wasn't even really in prison.
Please.
And on top of that, like you said about the victims not being able to testify, they were kept in the dark about the whole thing. They were not even disclosed any of this information.
Yep.
And so basically I was like, okay, well, you guys are screwed. Now you can't do anything. You can't say anything. You can't go after him. And which is like a serious violation of victims' rights.
And not only that, once they did that plea, it also labeled the victims as
prostitutes,
minor prostitutes.
Correct.
So, you know, that label really messed up their lives, because
every time
a lot
they
of
say
them
that,
lost their jobs, and they were being spoken about. And
every time I hear them use the word prostitution, it infuriates me to no end, because you cannot be a minor and be a prostitute.
You can't.
You cannot. You cannot consent as a minor. Oh my God. So to label them minor prostitutes, I don't know how they got away with that.
I don't either. I don't.
Yeah, they go on to say that it was a secretly signed plea deal document, and even the investigative team didn't know anything about it until it was done, because they were like, they did the deposition and everything, they were ready to go to court, and then all of a sudden they were like, oh nope, there's not going to be any court case. They're like, no court, what do you mean there's no court case?
Hearing,
like there's no indictment? Like what's going on?
Nothing.
They knew nothing about it. It was pretty much over their heads at that time, because it was the federal government that was a part of this deal.
Yep.
So they actually had to file a lawsuit to express their opposition against this plea deal.
Yes.
They had to actually fight for the right to prosecute. And they requested to pull emails between Epstein and government officials to show proof of the backdoor deal. At one point, U.S. Attorney Maria had requested that they stop emailing her work email and email her personal, which obviously was incredibly suspicious.
Not only suspicious.
Yeah, like why would you request somebody stop emailing you at work and email you outside of work unless you're doing something fishy?
Yeah, because when he also did the plea, they sealed all the victims' files that were victims so that they couldn't go after him. So their voice was taken when they did that. And
this was a domestic and international thing that he was doing. He was trafficking victims all around the country and to internationally, like to France and I guess like France, England, and like Italy, like other places like that. He was trafficking them out to. They go back to show another part of a deposition where they were addressing that he had 3 12-year-old girls shipped in from France to sexually abuse on his birthday. And when they asked him the question, I feel like it says a lot about him that he was like laughing at them asking him that question, like he think it's a joke. And then he again obviously was invoking his Fifth Amendment right. And that's when he made the comment about the Fifth Amendment is to protect the innocent.
Who's protecting the innocent?
Exactly. Then they go into a survivor story. Her name was Sarah Ranson. She was sexually trafficked by him. She went to New York in 2006. She was there for 2 weeks, went into a club called Quo and met Natalia. And she told her about Jeffrey Epstein and said that he could make her dreams come true. Yeah. And she told Sarah that he really wanted to meet her. So she went and met him. She described him as charming, charismatic, and friendly. Natalia then called her after her meeting with him and told her he wanted to pay for her education. Again, sound familiar? Like every other story we've heard. Yep. And then invited her to his private island and private plane. On the plane journey, she said that he started having sex in front of everyone and it made her very uncomfortable.
Hardcore sex.
Yeah. So apparently he had a private island, which was his principal residence. It was on an island called St. James located in the Virgin Islands. The island was his favorite place because it was extremely secluded and it was pretty much his site for doing whatever he wanted without anyone seeing or knowing about it.
He called it Little St. Jeff, which the girls called it, I think it was Virginia who called it Orgy Island. Yeah. And now it's known as the Pedophile Island.
Correct.
So
they also start showing a worker who worked on his island. I believe he said he was a pool cleaner. And he stated that his guests were, again, like another worker stated previously, pretty much all his guests were always young girls. And they also talk about how he had big, important people that also frequently visited his island. A couple names that he mentioned were Bill Clinton, Prince Andrew, and Alan Dershowitz. A victim did state that not every person that visited the island took part in what he did. Correct. So just for background context.
He also made a point of privacy was very important to him on that island. He had like the best security cameras and he had the best hacking defense against anything that he was doing on the internet, or so all that, who knows what he was doing on the internet that he needed that kind of security. The maintenance or the pool guy who worked there also stated that the island was full of like you said, they were full of the young girls. He said they were always either half naked, and then the older men that walked around, they walked around completely naked. So he also stated that he seen Prince Andrew having like foreplay with one of the young girls near the poolside. Then I don't know if he said Jeffrey asked him or someone else asked
somebody
him,
else.
Like, why do you do this?
Yeah, somebody else on the island asked him, why does he work there? And he said he does it for the money. Right. And then they asked him, would you let your daughters come to the island?
No, he said, do you have children? He's like, yeah, I have 2 daughters. Yeah. And then they're like, well, would you let your daughters come to the island? And he said, no, I would not let them anywhere near this island, and quit the next day. Yeah,
he said when he realized he would not want his daughters within 5 miles of that man, he quit the next day. So they go back into Sarah Ranson again. She stated that everyone working on the island knew what was going on.
Not only the island, everyone from the airport to the island knew what was going on.
Correct. So she said literally every worker on the island, from the people who took the luggage to the airport, to the airplane crew, the pilot, everything, literally everybody knew exactly what was going on. From the first day she arrived, she stated that she was getting abused. And again, it's another story like many others, except that she was asked to get on the massage table and he actually raped her. Yes. She said that the more damaged you appeared, the more excited he would get. And she said one day she was raped 3 times in one day. and she had had enough and she was going to attempt to escape the island. She went over to one of the like rockier areas to see if she could basically like try to swim away to escape, but he found her before she could even try. Yeah. And that's when she realized that he has surveillance monitoring everyone on the island 24/7, which again, like you said, he had a big thing about surveillance and all that.
He was like, she said the things that were done to her shouldn't have never been done to any woman. It's just horrifying what she went through.
I know.
Then they go into Shantae Davis. She worked for Jeffrey as a massage therapist. She was taken to the island as well. And Sarah Killen came to her and stated Jeffrey was ready for his massage. She then proceeded to massage him as always, like she always did. This was the first encounter with him sexually.
Yes.
And that's when she says he grabbed her and raped her. She did resist and told him no, but she claimed she did not fight, but she did resist.
She said the reason she didn't fight back is because she realized she was isolated on a private island in the middle of nowhere, completely under his control. And at that point, I mean, I'm sure in her head, it was like one of those, oh my God, if I fight him, he could easily just kill me, get rid of my body, and then it's over. So I understand her,
of course,
like why she was in fear. Like there was nowhere to go. And of course, you know, he entices people onto the island with these things of like, oh, you know, I just think you're so great. And, you know, I really want to support your career. And then people look at him, they think he's this big business person. So they're like, oh, so he probably, you know, took interest in me. And then he flies them out to his island where he thinks he can do whatever he wants.
Yep. And then they go back
and then the victims don't have anywhere to go because the only way off the island is the same way they got on, through him.
That's true. Even if you try swimming away, you're in a freaking island. Like,
exactly.
Where
else are you going to go?
You just dooming yourself to death.
Yeah. And so after they go through her story, they go back into talking a little bit more about his 18-month sentence in the county jail. So he served his sentence in a private wing of the jail, was provided additional food and other accommodations like a TV room.
That other prisoners can't
as if that wasn't bad enough, he was given work release that he allegedly was qualified for. He was allowed out of the jail 6 days a week for 12-hour periods and only had to report back at 8 p.m.
Yep.
What kind of jail sentence is that?
And he was never locked in there either.
He wasn't.
Never locked his cell door. They
always left his cell open. And he said, and they showed like all these payments that he made to have like deputies with him or whatever accompanying him to his job and everything. Records. And as this was going on, when he would have his quote unquote work hours out, he would go to his office building where he was still flying girls in and engaging in sexual acts.
Engaging in sexual misconduct and receiving emails of pictures of women.
Yep.
He also violated all his probation on a daily basis. And they had proof of the violations. And when they presented these violations to the probation officer, the response was, what do you want us to do? He's a celebrity. Like, really? Really?
Yep. Wow. And then at the end, he's like, oh, so happy that he's so happy his jail sentence is over. I'm like, first of all, he didn't even serve the 18 months. Second of all, what jail sentence? That's not a jail sentence.
That was a resort visit.
He only spent 13 months in there. Yeah, it was like the one girl said. It's like just staying at a really crappy inn for a while. That's not a jail sentence.
He stood in a crappy cell, a crappy inn.
Yeah, and they go back into Shantae again. She was asked if she wanted to go to Africa. She said that she felt like if she didn't talk about it, it was like the abuse wasn't happening.
Yeah.
So she went ahead and went with them on a trip to Africa. She said she basically was almost bumped up from being like a masseuse to a personal assistant. She got on a private plane to go to Africa, which included guests like Bill Clinton, Kevin Spacey, and Chris Tucker, which was a trip about the AIDS organization that Clinton had started. She did state no abuse occurred on this trip to Africa, and so she thought that the abuse might stop because of this. But then after the trip, the abuse went back to happening consistently. She met with Ghislaine and Epstein with her sister, and of course they said they wanted to pay for her schooling, and they were doing the same exact thing to her sister, which she didn't find out until later when her sister returned. They began sexually assaulting her as soon as they sent her to school. And he told her if So after she found out about this, she was obviously very upset. She had no idea what was happening to her sister. She felt really responsible and guilty for what had happened to her. And after she found this out, she called him and told him that she didn't want anything to do with him anymore, to which his response was, if you think you can get anywhere in life without me, you're wrong.
Yep. You can't make it far. But here's the thing. I don't understand. How do you put your young sister in the hands of a monster? I don't care.
She said
if you
she thought,
even if you think that it's only happening to you, no, they're a monster.
She said that because he was paying for her schooling and she was flying to like a foreign, like another country. I think it was in France or something like that. She was going to school. Oh, she was going to school in Spain.
Yeah.
So she was like, oh, well, at least she's international and he isn't. So she thought that she would be safe from him.
Yeah, but come on. He went to Africa. He has his private island. He goes anywhere. I mean,
yeah,
there's no way he didn't visit or go and have his young girls either accompanying him to these trips or there already. So
quite a few of the girls in this segment talk about how they didn't know like what the extent of what he was doing, like how far it actually went, and they didn't know about all the other victims out there. So there's a lot of them that said they thought like they were the only ones, I guess, but you know, obviously they were not. And they show a very like little brief segment about Harvey Weinstein and Jeffrey Epstein, how they are similar. Also, their names are almost the same, and how they were like involved with each other and very close, which is ironic because obviously Harvey Weinstein is a very large sex offender as well. I believe he's currently in prison.
Yeah.
They go back to Sarah Ransom. She explains about being sexually trafficked and how she was like coerced into it. And she explained it as like they coerce you into it with like all these offers and everything of like how they're going to make your life great. And then once you get in and you realize how terrible it is, they shut the door and then it's like you can't get out.
Yep.
It's like once you're in, and then they don't want you out, or they make it really hard for you to get out. She said that she had him in her life for 8.5 months, and she then left and disappeared to Spain, where she said she pretty much fled for her life. So one day, I guess she was like in New York, and then she realized she had to get out of there, and she just took off, flew to Spain, and said, he can't find me here.
Well, yeah,
and that was like how she got away from him.
He had her in New York. He had her in his apartment. She was given money to eat, and then she had transportation set to take her to the places that he was trafficking her. So he said he paid for her school, and that's when she decided she needed to run. And she was in New York, so she wasn't really monitored heavily.
Right.
And that's where she said, this is my chance to escape. And she did. She escaped.
Yes, she did. They do a jump to 2007 New York City. So they say first thing out of jail, he throws a gigantic party. And then they were talking about how all these people, like all these really big, important people, celebrities and politicians and everything like that, even though everybody knew like what he was being charged for and everything, that they still chose to associate with him, were showing up to his parties like if nothing had ever happened.
Yep.
And then they show a segment where he's just talking about like all the things that he's done for people. And so he really like in his mind like built himself up as this person who's doing all these things like to help people. And all he talks about is, oh, when so-and-so meets me, then all of a sudden you see that they get offered like this deal. Like, you think that's a coincidence?
No, he's surrounded himself with important people.
After that, they go into a segment where the survivors describe how everything that they went through affected them negatively in their lives, from turning to substance abuse, self-harm, depression, and suicidal thoughts. Haley Robson describes how her name was tossed out during the case. She was also another one who, she was a minor at the time when he was doing that like pyramid scheme, and how she had also been someone who recruited other girls. She talked about how her name being tossed out there and all her information basically allowed her to be vilified by people. Exactly. And I was just thinking, like, isn't it crazy? They put her name out there. Forget the fact that Epstein is the person behind the whole giant thing and how he's done all these terrible things. But let's get all on Haley Robson and tell her how terrible she is. And yet Epstein gets to walk around thinking that he's this amazing person who just makes things happen for people.
Yeah.
Makes no sense to me.
Not to mention Michelle Licata. She was also a victim. She started self-inflicting pain by cutting herself. And she started doing all kinds of drugs to try to get rid of the pain, try to numb herself. And pretty much she said she set herself up to a path of self-destruction in hopes that one day she just wouldn't wake up to try to escape the pain that Jeffrey put her through. So, I mean, he was a monster. He was a monster.
Yeah, that becomes more and more apparent. At the ending of the episode, they show Virginia. She was another survivor. She also ran away to escape from him as well. She was invited to his island. Ghislaine asked her if she would have a baby for her and Epstein. So basically they asked her if she would like surrogate their child, except that they didn't want her to have like any rights over it. So she would have to like sign over all the rights and everything. So she would have no ties to the child. And so Virginia said that she was afraid that if she said no,
they would kill her.
They would kill her. So she asked so she said she'll do it, but she needs to get her massage certificate first and then she'll do it for them. So they told her, okay, we'll go ahead and do that for you. He said happy early birthday, gave her money and a plane ticket to Thailand to get her certificate. She went to Thailand, met a man named Robert, said she fell in love. He proposed to her. They were married in a Buddhist temple and he asked her to move to Australia with him. So after all this happened, she called Epstein and told him that she got married, and then he got angry and hung up the phone. And she said that after that, she felt free. And she then told her husband, so I guess afterwards, like she was thinking and reflecting back on it, and she realized that, you know, she can't be the only person. He's probably doing it to a lot of other people. And then she knew she couldn't stay silent and that he had to be stopped. So her and her husband said that they were going to work together to take them down.
So then for this episode, Alexander Costa he justified the plea deal, which there's really no justification. Harvey Weinstein denies all allegations against him. And of course, Ghislaine Maxwell denies all allegations against her as well. Well, she doesn't deserve to say her name right.
Yeah, there was another ending statement that said, Maria Villafana's attorney released a statement saying Miss Villafana is prohibited from discussing this matter and her opinions on the investigation, but that she advocated for victims at every turn. FYI, Maria Villafana is the one earlier who was in email communication back and forth regarding the plea deal, who said to start emailing her from her personal email. So she was part of the plea deal that got him no prison time. All right, so that was the end of episode 3. And then now we're going to go into episode 4, which started off with another deposition.
Yep. I named it, well, the episode 4 was called Finding Their Voice. I named it The Race to Get Jeffrey Epstein. This was February 17, 2010. And the deposition started where they asked him if he knew Virginia Roberts. And
yeah, he kept asking who?
Yeah.
How do you spell that?
Yeah, how do you spell her name?
Common spelling, Virginia. Yeah. Wait, can you spell it? And the guy's just like, really? And he's like, Roberts. Oh, can you spell that? Oh, I'm sorry. What was it? I don't think I know. I was like, really? You're going to try to play that stupid game?
Then
I feel like because they were poking back at him, that was him trying to poke back at them to aggravate them.
Then they asked if it was true that he forced Virginia Roberts to have sex with numerous friends. And he stated, "Are you kidding?"
And then he said again, he's invoking his Fifth Amendment right.
I swear, sickens me to see that man on the screen.
I know. And then they go into Virginia. She talks about how she knew that this was still happening to other women. She said she could not stay silent. She stated that she was also abused by Prince Andrew.
Yes.
And she felt that justice needed to be served on these people. So then she goes a little bit into Prince Andrew. She met him in 2001 at Ghislaine's townhouse. Ghislaine played a guessing game asking how old he thinks she is, which apparently Virginia said was a favorite game of hers to play with people. He guessed that she was 17 years old, which was correct. And then he actually made a comment saying he had a daughter who's not too far from her age. They went to a dance club where she made a comment about how he was like sweating like profusely all over her. They went back to the townhouse. Virginia asked if Epstein could take a photo of her with Prince Andrew, which looking back, thank goodness she did, because otherwise he would have been able to get away with saying that he never knew her. But thanks to this photo, it shows that It shows her posing with Prince Andrew, and then it shows Ghislaine in the background like she's opening a door into a room, and you can tell it's the second floor. You can tell that it's the second floor of a house.
You can tell.
And he
like
is standing very close to her, not like you would stand with like a person you just met. He was standing very close, very comfortably with her, with his hand wrapped around her waist.
And he's like, I don't remember ever taking that. I don't remember ever being there. But yeah, when he was describing that he was accused of raping her in one of the rooms, he described where the room was without that being disclosed to him. So
yeah, and it's clear in the picture. You can tell it's the second floor of a home. And Virginia said that after this picture was taken, Ghislaine said that she would need to do for Prince Andrew what she does for Jeffrey. And then that's when she was sexually abused by Prince Andrew. After this, they put a statement across the screen, obviously saying again, Ghislaine Maxwell denies all allegations and maintains that she had, quote, no involvement in or knowledge of Epstein's alleged misconduct.
Yeah, and with that interview being placed in London, England, Buckingham Palace issued a statement. It is emphatically denied that the Duke of York had any form of contact or sexual relationship with Virginia Roberts.
Which, first of all, obviously a form of contact was incorrect because there's a picture showing him with her, with his hand wrapped around her waist.
Not only that, going back to the pool guy,
he said he saw Prince Andrew sitting on his front porch.
Yes.
Which he did say earlier in the documentary when he was talking about some of the big
he'd never been to
people.
The island.
Yeah, he said he'd never been there. Oh, gosh. And then she was talking about how in 2015, London, England, the news were calling her a prostitute.
Yes. 17-year-old.
When she was 17 years old. They were calling her a 17-year-old prostitute. Virginia said that she was trafficked 18 times nationally and internationally. One of the individuals who she stated she was sexually abused by was actually Alan Dershowitz.
Yes.
Virginia then said it happened 6 times and that she was trafficked to him by Epstein. Alan, they kind of show him a little bit how he's like really angrily like defending himself and saying that, you know, she has never said publicly this, and I've never had sex with a minor, and I would never have sex with a minor. I've never had sex with a minor in my life, even when I was a minor, which I thought was a weird thing to say, that even when I was a minor, I didn't have sex with a minor. It sounds like someone's trying too hard to defend themselves. And he said, I challenge her to say
on camera
in this documentary that she accuses him of raping her, which she did. That was the next thing that happened. Then they gave a brief statement saying that Virginia Roberts, Jeffrey, and Alan Dershowitz have sued each other for defamation. And obviously, Alan Dershowitz is denying any other allegations of sexual misconduct. So,
well, I'm pretty sure that'll go away once they go through all those photos and everything. I'm sure that'll go away.
We'll find out. They then go into Sarah again. She was saying that nobody would listen to her claims when she was talking about things that he did in 2016 when she tried to speak out. Pretty much she got shut down. People didn't want to hear it. In 2017, that was when a celebrity tweet started the really big Me Too movement where it went viral. And then that's when people all over the world really started actually like listening to survivor stories. And then people started feeling more confident that they were able to step up and share their stories. Yeah. So they did talk about how the Me Too movement put power in victims' voices and how speaking out allows them to support each other, which is true because they were all going through this like by themselves. Some of them thought that they were the only person this was happening to. Some of them were aware of it happening to other people, but nobody was willing to speak out. So you feel isolated and alone. And this movement really empowered them to speak out and empowered more people to come out and share their stories and support each other. And they were able to build like a support system with each other.
Yes.
Which I thought was really special.
The one who tweeted that was Alyssa Milano. She tweeted about the
Me Too movement.
The Me Too movement.
Yeah. Then they showed a statement across the screen. It said, November 28th, 2018, the Miami Herald published a report that examines Epstein's 2008 plea deal. It brings renewed attention to the case. In Washington, D.C., Alexander Acosta was chosen to serve as Secretary of Labor. He was nominated by President Trump. Epstein was never indicted. They read something that showed in the agreement that it would not be made public to anyone. So the reason that it's important to mention Alexander Acosta serving as Secretary of Labor is because obviously throughout the series, they show how he played a really big part in the plea deal. And soon we're going to get into a little bit more on that. But what's important is that at this point, it's bringing attention back onto this case.
So they did put in place a federal order that the agreement went against the victim's rights. So the lawsuit started, which was way overdue, like 10 years way overdue.
They stated that the federal government, under direction of Alexander Acosta, not only failed to inform victims, but actively misled them.
Yes.
So this meant that there would be a hearing in front of a federal judge where the victims would be able to make their voices heard. And they would have the right to prosecute Epstein and his conspirators. So important to note, that means there would be no immunity. All that immunity out the window.
Yes.
And after this, Jeffrey Epstein was then later arrested in New Jersey airport for federal charges on sex trafficking.
Yep.
This was
July
something
6, 2019.
Yeah, this was something he did not see coming. So they were able to catch him.
Finally!
I know. Then they go to July 8th, 2019 federal courthouse where they're talking about the United States versus Jeffrey Epstein. Jeff Burnham was a U.S. attorney for New York, announced the charges. And he said they deserve their day in court, that the victims deserve to have their voices heard, and they deserve to be able to walk into a court and tell their stories and have their voices be heard. He then announced the charges of conspiracy to commit sex trafficking and second for trafficking of underage girls.
That's when they did the search warrant.
Correct.
They went into his New York home.
They showed two.
Apparently worth millions of dollars.
They showed two statements. One was following Epstein's arrest, more than a dozen women came forward to accuse him of abuse. And then they made another statement that said, within hours of Epstein's arrest, federal agents raided his New York mansion, which that's what you were about to talk about.
Once they searched the home, they found hundreds of photos of the victims. Once Jeffrey was arrested, everyone who knew him acted as if they didn't. So everyone was making claims. Oh, I didn't know him. Oh, I argued with him a long time ago. Oh, I haven't spoken to him in over 15 years.
Important to note, he had a locked safe that was full of these pictures, and they titled it child pornography. And then, like you said, people were starting to distance from him. Bill Clinton was making a statement about how he said he never visited any of his residencies, even though there is evidence to show that he traveled on his private plane 26 times. And a worker story corroborates with him being at the residence sitting on Epstein's porch, along with obviously stories of all of his victims.
From
the other big person,
to 2003, he traveled back and forth
26 times. And then Trump came out and said that he never was really a fan of him, even though a previous article that I talked about in the last episode where he said he's a really great guy and we share in common our love for young women.
He said he had an argument with him like 10 years ago and he distanced himself from him.
And that's BS.
Like, okay. Victims then stated that Clinton did not do anything improper when he visited the island. There was certain victims that did state, not all victims. So nobody really knows until everyone starts coming forward.
That's true.
And I mean, if you're out there listening, come forward, because the more people, the more voices, the more, all the people that were involved will get their time in court.
Exactly. And here's what I don't understand. Why
he denied
Bill Clinton is denying visiting the island.
Why?
Because it makes him look 10 times more suspicious.
Pictures,
evidence,
witnesses, evidence that he visited. Like,
I don't understand.
Even the victim said, why is he lying about being there? I mean, he didn't do anything improper. Or did he?
That's why him denying it makes him look 10 times more suspicious. Like, if he would have just came out and said, hey, I have been there. I did visit him a handful of times. When I was there, I didn't really see anything happen. So I didn't know what was going on. We had a professional relationship for whatever. And I had no idea it was going on. I mean, nobody has come out against him, again, like you said, as of yet, and said that he did anything improper.
Correct.
So he's hurting himself more by saying he hasn't been there than if he just owns up to the fact that he was there.
He can never own up to any truth. Like with Monica Lewinsky.
Always happen.
Never had sexual relations with that woman. Now,
it does worse.
I've never visited that island.
It does worse to lie about something, especially when it can easily be proven that you're lying. It makes no sense.
It doesn't.
But moving on.
Then, of course, Prince Andrew denies any allegations and does not recall any event of meeting Virginia on live TV in England. He's seen the photo but has no memory. And then, of course, his interview backfired on him.
And here's the weird part. Why did he feel like, this is the thing, he had to try so hard to deny this happening. Like, he was so into denying it happening that even the smallest little thing they said about him sweating, he had to be like, oh, what? Yes. No, I didn't sweat.
Oh, at that time, I didn't sweat. I had a condition where I couldn't sweat at that time.
I'm sorry.
So if you catch me now, it was only at that time that I didn't have a sweat condition, but you might see me sweating now.
That's like, really? That's just like something you would hear
He dug a hole. I'm glad he did the interview because he dug himself in a hole.
He made it worse.
People who thought he was innocent started to think, maybe there's something there, because that interview was, they were like, really bad.
He didn't do himself any favors. He made himself look guilty by doing that interview.
And of course, after he was arrested, the pool maintenance guy was addressed by FBI, and they started to show him photos of all the girls that were supposed to have been on the island to see if he can, ID any of them being at the island. One of them was, is it Sarah who was? Virginia. One of them was Virginia. But when they showed him the photos the first time, they showed Virginia as she looked now. So he was like, I never seen her on the island.
Right.
But then a mysterious photo showed up from somewhere where she was 17. And when he looked at it, he said, oh, yeah, that's the girl that Prince Andrew was having foreplay on near the pool that day that he saw them.
Correct.
So he pinpointed them.
The worker identifying her as the girl in the picture corroborates with the story of her saying that she was had a history of abuse by Prince Andrew. There was a statement that was made that Prince Andrew said that he was at a Pizza Express with his daughter the night that Virginia Roberts Joffrey says that they met. And I'm just like, really? Because that picture of you standing with your hand around her waist doesn't look like a Pizza Express to me.
Exactly. Then of course Acosta makes me so sick.
Yeah.
When he goes on conference that he was so happy that he was caught and brought to and is being brought to justice. He shouldn't have been going through that, because he should have brought him to justice when they had him.
That's why I loved what the was it? He's one of the attorneys, a detective, one of the investigators. He was like, actually, I really like, first of all, everything that came out of his mouth was bullshit. But also, at least I'm glad that he stood there and said he's so happy that we were able to find all these charges on him. Because basically, he's kind of complimenting us and saying that we did a way better job than he could.
Exactly. He did. Yeah. And then after that statement, conference, he then did another conference stating that
he was resigning. Yes, there was a lot of pressure on him.
Oh, it wasn't because of the Jeff Epstein.
Yeah.
It's just other stuff.
So this is what he said. He did the conference. First of all, there was a lot of heat on him when he did the first conference. Then there was even more heat on him. So there was so much pressure, and they were like pulling things back up, questioning the legality and everything of what he did for that plea deal, which, he just tried to deflect everything. And then, so because there was so much pressure and public outrage on him, then for him to resign, he ended up resigning 2 days after he did that initial conference, saying he's so happy that they bringing the case back and that new information was brought to light. And they were all like, yeah, bullshit. And so he gave some BS statement saying that like, oh, I'm only resigning because the Department of Labor doesn't deserve to have all this attention on the Jeffrey Epstein case, blah, 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 blah. So I'm resigning for the better of the department. I'm like, oh my God, if I could...
Whatever.
I know.
This is
disgusting, nauseating.
This is my opinion and my opinion only. Anyone who agrees with me, I'm happy that you agree with me. Here's how that plea deal went. The judge, the prosecutor, and anyone else that was in that room were being blackmailed by him. That's how that goes. And of course, they brought up that plea immunity crap because they're in power. They abuse their power. That's how that went. That's my opinion, and I'm sticking with it.
And I agree with your opinion.
And of course, when they caught him, of course he's resigning. They got into his New York apartment where he had all those blackmail tapes, which we'll be seeing them because that's still an open investigation.
It's still going.
And we'll be seeing all of that. Blackmail tapes. And I'm pretty sure one of them on there is Acosta and the other judge. I'm sorry. That's my opinion, and that's why he resigned, because he knows he's in the hot seat now.
Yeah.
And now that, you know, they got all that evidence into lockdown, believe me, he knew what he was doing.
I agree with you. And because I always thought it was fishy from the beginning.
Of course.
They then jump to July 15, 2019. Epstein pled not guilty and was trying to get like a $100 million bail.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, why would they even have a bond or bail for that? But it's okay, because we're going to get into what ended up happening with that.
Yeah.
They show a group of survivors that show up to court to represent all of the victims for the bail hearing. During the bail hearing, Judge Richard Berman, which, by the way, I give Judge Richard Berman a lot of credit for what he did in this case, because he really did a lot.
We need
especially
more judges like that.
I know, we need like 100 Richard Bermans, like
more than 100.
Yeah, like everywhere.
In every court system.
Because he really did a lot to make sure that the survivors would be heard and that this case wouldn't be dropped. So he gave the survivors the opportunity to address him. The victims were able to face him. They were able to accuse him, and they were able to express their desire that he not be put on bond. His attorneys were offering hundreds of millions of dollars to get him out of jail. At one point, they even said that he would give literally everything that he had in a bond for him to be released on bail. The prosecutors presented additional evidence, and they presented to the judge that it looked like he had an escape plan, which included that he had diamonds and a fake passport. So, because of that, the judge decided that he would not be able to post bond or bail due to the fact that he presented a danger to the community and a likelihood to flight.
I was like, yay!
I know. So there was like so much, honestly, at this point in the documentary, you know, like watching like the victim stories and everything and kind of seeing it like play out. At this point, I was starting to feel emotional with the victims because I was like so happy for them.
Me too. I mean, I could only imagine how they felt. First off, when he got caught, and then when his bail was denied. Half of them were so scared that if he got bail, he was going to leave and they were all going to be in danger.
Exactly.
They were scared for their life. And I could just imagine that emotion, because if I put myself in their shoes, I would have felt like I couldn't breathe. And then I would have felt like I could breathe once he was caught and bail was denied. So it's like their final sigh.
I know.
But then
they were like, for the first time, he's in a real jail cell.
Yes.
And he finally cannot use his money to buy his way out.
Unfortunately for the victims, on 10/10/2019, Jeffrey Epstein was then reported dead. And
August 10th, 2019.
August 10th. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was like October. Yeah, August 10th, 2019.
Sorry. It looks like he committed suicide by hanging himself in the cell. And the victims then felt like he still escaped. On the commenting of that he committed suicide, they said they found him in his cell and that he had hung himself. So basically there's some fishy stuff around it. Like, how did they not see him attempting to do this? Well,
they said the guards were asleep.
That
there were issues with the cameras.
They said they put him in the worst cell that there is in that whole place.
But it was
where the cameras
monitored.
were no good. No, they said the cameras were no good, and the guards were asleep, because it wasn't. So you say it was like the worst part of the jail wing.
It seems all too convenient.
Does. I mean, first off, if he did kill himself, that was the cowardly thing to do. Secondly,
it was like they said, him doing that, it was like the last F you to the victims.
It was.
F you, you're not gonna get the
and not only that,
justification of seeing me.
Before he hung himself, if he did, he transferred a whole bunch of money to where was it? The Virgin Islands?
Yeah, the Virgin Islands.
Which is
That's
another
where his
F you
private
to the
island was.
Yeah, it was another F you to the victims.
Apparently, a lot of conspiracy theories were flourishing about his death. People wondering if he really killed himself. Some people saying it might have been faked. I don't know about it being faked. But it was said that he had a lot of blackmail material and that a lot of people would have wanted him dead. He had a surveillance camera watching every corner of his home. He had powerful people there who were using his trafficking ring, and the cameras gave him blackmail material on those people.
Yes.
So that was well known.
They said that there was nowhere in the New York, especially in the New York home, there was nowhere that was safe from a camera. Like, there was cameras on toilet seats. There was like cameras in every crevice of that house,
every inch.
And when the girls would go into the camera room, that they would be like, oh my gosh, that's my room, that's my bathroom, like that's where we all use the bathroom. And he's just videotaping all of this. He told them that a lot of those people, those important people, owed him favors. So the girls, when they were looking at it, all they thought was blackmailing schemes. So I'm pretty sure he blackmailed a lot of big people. And now that he was caught and everything was out in the open and all the evidence was out, it wasn't secured anymore like he promised. I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, to make him look like he would commit suicide, I would not be surprised. Because how convenient, no cameras working.
That's why
on that side of the wing. And why would they put him there if the cameras aren't working?
It's too convenient.
I mean, this was a high case.
High profile case. Yeah. Why would you not keep eyes on that 24/7? Then
they said that he did commit suicide, but an autopsy person.
Oh yeah, Jeffrey Epstein's brother, Mark Epstein, did not believe that it actually was a suicide, and he asked for another autopsy to be completed. There was no evidence to indicate he had jumped or leaped from the bunk, as it was suggested when they found him. The person who examined and performed the autopsy said that he had 3 fractures on his thyroid bone on the left side and a fracture on the thyroid cartilage. He stated, you cannot get these from a suicidal hanging of somebody who is leaning forward.
Correct.
They were saying there was not proper force to cause those fractures in his specific type of suicidal hanging. And he did say it's not impossible, but that it was extremely, extremely, extremely rare for it to happen.
Correct.
They show another statement, August 8th, 2019, 2 days before his death, which you already said, he transferred his fund to the Virgin Islands. He had an estate that was valued at more than $577 million. And so by him committing suicide, it was like another way to make it difficult for victims to get restitution. On August 27, 2019, Epstein's lawyers wanted the case dismissed. The judge said nope. He did not want that to happen. The judge still wanted the victims to have their day in court, even though he had passed. Victims were then invited to a hearing to speak their truth. Over a dozen victims arrived in court. They did state that he was a convicted pedophile, so I'm like, at least he was officially a registered sex offender before he passed. So I said they can put on his grave Jeffrey Epstein, sex offender and pedophile, narcissist, manipulative, liar.
So the judge was their hero.
You can use that quote and put it directly on the tombstone if you want. The victims, at the end, the victims did speak very highly of Judge Berman and how he allowed them to speak and have their voices heard. And they did go up to 2020, current time. As the artist, victim who it was Maria, correct? Maria Farmer?
Yes,
with her
Maria
artwork.
Farmer with her artwork. She was the first victim that came forward. And of course, nothing happened. He walked away with that immunity. And it was like a big sigh for her, and she was able to start painting again.
I thought what she was doing was really beautiful. She was doing these art pieces.
That diagram of of what she told the FBI agents back then of everything that was going on, and she put it all in that diagram. And then now she's working on a new project, which is she's drawing all the victims to give them a voice.
Correct.
It's her way of giving them a voice. And then she had this collection of paper dolls that she did. And
so
she said the paper
in the
dolls,
pictures, every portrait of the victims that she's drawing, they're holding a paper doll in their hand,
Yes.
and that's what ties all of them together.
Yes.
And she said the paper doll represents
The
all
young
of the
victims.
unspoken victims who
Yes.
have yet to come forward that are out there.
Correct. All of
which I thought was really powerful.
I know. All of the young victims that have not come forward and wants to know what happened to them. Like, you know, if you're out there, it's safe to come forward. Or is it? I don't know. I mean, this is like the biggest scandal and case ever. I don't remember a bigger case than this, where
there
so
are
many young women were, you know, treated this way and trafficked, and it's and by big powerful people. It's insane.
Yeah, and the point of this is that at the end of the documentary, it's not the end. It's not over. Just because he isn't here anymore to face his sentence, even though he kind of got his last desserts.
Help.
But he didn't do this on his own.
No, he
didn't. A
didn't.
lot of powerful people are involved.
Yes.
And those people need to be brought to justice as well. It doesn't all just fall on him, even though he's the mastermind behind it and he started it. There are so many other people out there that used it, that took advantage of it, that also did these terrible things to these girls who need to pay for what they did as well. So it's not over. There's still more to come. And I am looking forward to see
what happens.
More justice be served for these victims.
Yeah, because now the victims are going after the people who helped them and hold them accountable.
As they should. As they should.
I don't know. Watching this docu-series really opened my eyes, and it's like we all need to be accountable for our kids. I remember the phrase, it takes a village to raise a child. And we need to get back to that, where people used to watch other people's kids. And I don't know, this case really, really hit me. And it just made me think, when you have daughters, I mean, my daughter, Sammy, was the same age as these girls during that time.
Yeah.
I don't know if there would have been a judge or a cop that would have stopped me from getting to him. I don't know. He wouldn't have committed suicide. There wouldn't have been a court date. I don't know. I couldn't be responsible for my actions, to be honest with you. But then again, it's like I say, you need to talk to your daughters. He did take advantage of a lot of girls that were from broken homes. And, you know, it's sad because they don't have anyone to know who that role model is. They don't have a role model. Their role model is whoever's out on the street. That's their role model. And it's sad. It's really sad, because these girls need education and help. And it should be on us to have a place for these girls to go. When they don't have a home, when they have broken homes, there should be a place where they should go to get help, so that they can get help going to schools. They can get help living somewhere. Instead, they're being used as sex objects. And then, of course, they're desperate and they're looking for help. And they're these pedophiles just wreaking on them and using them for whatever they want to be used. And we need to do something. We need to help these girls. We need to do something.
I agree. I think you said it very well. With that being said, this does wrap up the series on Jeffrey Epstein. And to close off, I just want to talk again about RAINN, RAINN, just to bring light to how you can help and what help is available out there. RAINN stands for Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network, is the nation's largest anti-sexual violence organization. They created and operate the National Sexual Assault Hotline, which is 1-800-656-4673, a free hotline that's available 24/7. They are in partnership with more than 1,000 local sexual assault service providers across the country, and they operate the DoD Safe Helpline for the Department of Defense. They also carry out programs to prevent sexual violence, help survivors, and ensure that perpetrators are brought to justice. In 25 years, they have helped 3 million survivors and their loved ones.
Amen.
So I just wanted to bring that up again, since we are still discussing this topic, and obviously this is something we're going to support forever. We do have a GoFundMe going if you would like to donate to this organization.
Yes.
If these stories touched you in any way and you want to see how you can make a difference, this is one way that you can help. And we're going to link that in the description of this so that you can go there if you'd like to donate some money and help out in any way you can. And also, don't forget, one of the most important thing is making sure that everyone out there knows that they're not alone.
Exactly.
Your voice is powerful.
Exactly.
And that there are support systems out there for you. No matter what you're going through, no matter how alone you feel, or no matter how you might feel you're the only one going through it, I promise you that you're not, and there is help out there. And there are support systems out there that will help you get through it.
That's very true. And again, we need to put our part as well. Be aware. Be aware of the surroundings. Be aware of what's going on. And if they can't be a voice, let's be their voice. Let's make sure we keep our kids safe.
Absolutely. And with that being said, we want to thank you again for listening. And we hope that you have a wonderful Friday and that you are being safe, happy, healthy, and that you are manifesting everything you desire out of life.
Amen.